I think it's possible to build an entire life without ever really choosing it. Not because someone forced you, just because every little decision makes sense. The degree makes sense. The job makes sense. Staying on track makes sense. And when every single choice seems reasonable, you don't notice that together they are creating a life that's not really yours. From the outside, my life looked like it was working well. But living it felt like I was following a blueprint for a house that I never really wanted to live in. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes with this feeling. It's not really the loneliness of being isolated or having no one around you. It's the loneliness that you're not really able to explain what's wrong. Because technically, there's nothing wrong. So I never said anything to anyone. How could I? Because life's a gift. That's something I understood really early in my life when I was 14, when my mom died. It taught me that life could be over in any minute. So I had to be happy with my health, with my degrees, with my job, with the people that I loved and that loved me, I hope. What am I going to say? What am I going to complain about? I had everything in my life and it still feels empty. It felt so ungrateful to complain about this. It feels like I'm being dramatic. It feels like I had a problem that I wasn't allowed to have. And the gap between how things looked and how they felt became wider, quietly, without noticing. The life I built didn't happen by accident. I built it very purposely, but just not according to my own plans. I made choices based on what other people and society were saying was the smart thing to do, the responsible thing, the safe thing. And there's one moment that I keep coming back to. Between finishing high school and my bachelor, I wanted to take a gap year. I wanted to travel, see the world, breathe for a minute before the next chapter starts. But people around me told me, if you stop now, you will lose momentum. You will find it hard to get back into school. And it will make it harder to get your bachelor degree. Just do those 4 years of bachelors and then you're free after and you can do whatever you want. So that's what I did. I went straight from high school into my 4 years bachelor and I got it. And after finishing my bachelor, I felt the pressure to get a job right away because I had to have work experience. And I wanted my own place, so I had to save money. I can't travel now. And looking back, I can see which cycle I entered. Always waiting for a better timing. First I had to finish my degree, then I had to find a job, then I had to save money. There was always one more responsible thing that I had to do before I could finally give myself the permission to do what I actually wanted. And that is what it makes this pattern so hard to notice. I always choose for the safe path, but I didn't feel happy about it. It was just comfortable. Going for a bachelor was a wise choice. Going for a job was a wise choice. Saving money is a wise choice. Every single decision makes sense. But together they were building a life that wasn't really mine. I thought the problem was that I was waiting for the right time. But looking back, I think the problem was something deeper than that. I had become completely committed to a version of myself before I ever had explored what else I could be. And there's actually a name for that. Psychologists call it identity foreclosure. It sounds dramatic, but it's actually quite simple. Identity foreclosure happens when you commit to an identity or a direction in life without first exploring the alternatives. You decide who you are going to be before you really had the chance to discover who you might want to become. And of course, it's not like that someone sits you down and tells you who you have to be. Nobody ever say those expectations out loud. But as a kid, you notice which choices are getting praised, which lives are considered as successful, which decisions people make that get support. You learn what a responsible person does, what a smart person does, what someone like you is supposed to do. And then you choose accordingly. And that felt super uncomfortable for me. I had to make my own decisions. But nobody forced me to get this degree. Nobody forced me to get straight into a full-time job. Nobody physically stopped me from traveling. So the choices were mine, but just the framework I used to make them wasn't. I wasn't asking what in my life makes me feel alive. What am I curious about? Who I might become if I allow myself to explore. And when you make enough choices with that filter, you can end up deeply committed to a life that you never truly explored. And by the way, you can become super successful at that. You can collect degrees, you can get the best jobs, the biggest promotions, and approval. But I feel like every achievement makes it also harder to admit that the direction itself might not be yours. Because now you're not only chosen the life, you have built your identity around it, being the person who chose it. And that's why I think this quote of Danko is so powerful. If you don't create a career, society will give you one. If you don't create a purpose, society will give you one. If you don't create an identity, society will give you one. So I had a career, I had a direction. I had a very, very clear idea of the person that I was supposed to be, but I couldn't remember consciously creating any of them. I just had accept the identity that was available to me. The educated one, the responsible one, the one who stayed on track, and I became so good at performing it that I mistaken it for who I was. I want to be careful here, because this doesn't mean that my degree was a mistake. It doesn't mean that my job was wrong. And it definitely doesn't mean that everyone should just quit their normal life and start traveling. That would be just another blueprint that is handed to you by someone else. The opposite of identity foreclosure isn't rebelling just to rebel. You don't have to throw everything away that you've been taught. It's about exploration. It's giving yourself enough room to find out what you believe, what you want, and what kind of life actually fits you before making your next commitment. And for me, that exploration started when I stepped out of my environment that kept reflecting the same version of me back to myself. I traveled, I started surfing, I met people from different countries and cultures who have made completely different choices. Not better choices, just different ones. And being around them showed me that many of the rules I had been living by weren't really rules at all. They were just one way of living. And my life looks completely different now. I travel to places where I can surf, I spend my mornings with whatever I want to do, and I work on things that I genuinely care about. And honestly, sometimes it still feels a little bit selfish. Sometimes the old version of me still says that I should do something more sensible, more secure, more serious. But now I recognize this voice, and it's just an old identity that I committed to a long time ago that is trying to keep itself alive. So maybe that's why a life can look so good on paper, but it feels empty inside. Not because you failed at building a good life, but because you became someone before you ever gave yourself the permission to discover who else you could be. And if you recognize yourself in this, if you're like, looks right, but it doesn't feel like it's yours, I started a community called One Way Ticket. It's a space for women who are questioning the life that they were expected to want and trying to discover what they might want instead. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but in my opinion, it's good to surround yourself by different people than the people you've always been with. It's just a new environment with people who can show you possibilities your current environment may not be able to reflect back to you. Because sometimes you don't need another answer, you just need different mirrors. Mirrors that show you a different way of life and inspire you. It's a safe space to be honest about what no longer fits you, explore who you want to become, and alongside people who understand the in-between. The link to the community is in the description. And if you're curious about how my life looked like when I was living on autopilot, I have a video about that too. Hope to see you soon.